Why do Irish distillers believe that triple distillation creates a smoother, more refined whiskey? What makes a whiskey feel warm and smooth on the palate rather than fiery and harsh? And why does the Belfast origin of ginger ale make it such a natural pairing with McConnell's Irish whiskey? In today's episode, you'll hear the stories and tips that answer these questions in part 2 of our chat with John Kelly, CEO of the Belfast Distillery Company, responsible for reviving one of Belfast's most famous brands, McConnell's Irish Whiskey, which actually dates back 250 years to this year to 1776. You don't need to have listened to part 1 from last week first, but if you missed it, go back and have a listen after you finish this one. By the end of our conversation, you'll also discover how first-fill American bourbon barrels influence the citrus, vanilla, and floral character of McConnell's 5-year-old whiskey, how a higher malt content contributes to a longer, more persistent finish in blended Irish whiskey, why McConnell's focuses on blending grain and malt whiskey rather than pot still whiskey, why the distillery chose Oloroso sherry casks for finishing and aging, and how sherry influences both the color and flavor of the whiskey, the role a higher bottling strength plays in enhancing flavor and cocktail versatility, and how cognac casks can generate a more refined whiskey profile with notes of dried pineapple, castor sugar, and ginger spice. Do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my 3rd book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started. Welcome to episode 382. So what's new in the wine world this week? Well, as it stands now, a BC winery can legally mail a bottle to Seattle, but cannot mail that same bottle to someone in Toronto. Our country's internal trade laws predate smartphones and Netflix, and are now being called out by winemakers who can sell faster and easier to foreigners than to their own neighbors 2 provinces over. That's what prompted BC's Lightning Rock Winery owner Ron Kubek to launch a national petition this week, backing MP Dan Albus's Bill C-262. As Ron says, Canadians should be able to buy Canadian. You can't argue with that. Dan and Ron first worked on this in 2020 to 2021 before a snap election stopped the effort. And now, this is back in Parliament. On March 9th, Dan tabled Bill C-262, which would amend the Canada Post Corporation Act to finally allow Canadian wineries, craft breweries, and distilleries to ship their products directly to consumers across provincial lines. This isn't a winery or distillery issue. It's a consumer access issue. Canadians want to support wineries, breweries, and distilleries across the country, especially given the wonderfully wild range of tastes that are not the same province by province. But in many cases, we're blocked or face significant barriers from doing this. That House of Commons petition is now live online at www.petitions.ourcommons.ca. I clicked through on that link and I'll share it in the show notes with you. It's the first petition I've ever signed, and it took me 15 seconds to add my name. I strongly encourage you to do the same if you want access to a much wider range of Canadian wines, beer, whiskeys, and spirits, and to support these small family farms across the country, some of which will not survive without it. So again, that link is petitions.ourcommons.ca. And in the show notes, I'll put the specific URL right to that petition alone, which is petition number 7258. Provinces are also working toward a May 2026 timeline to establish a national direct-to-consumer framework. They also need your support. In other wine news, the town of Pompeii, Italy, has officially begun harvesting grapes from vines replanted within the ancient city ruins, using the exact same DNA-mapped varietals that were buried by Vesuvius in 79 AD. An ex-Napa Valley winemaker was sentenced this week for a $2.5 million scam where he sold generic cheap grapes as high-end varieties. His apology to the court included a promise to stick to juice boxes from now on. Researchers have discovered that phylloxera, the vine-killing pest, is evolving to survive in colder climates, sparking a new wave of biosecure vineyard tours in northern regions. A New York bar has started offering Japan's rarest whiskey at a staggering $4,100 Canadian per drink, served in a glass that the customer gets to keep as a souvenir of their financial daring or misplaced priorities. In a bizarre cultural crossover, Casamigos has been named the official spirit of a major international chess tournament, leading to a surge in the tequila gambit memes on social media. A sinkhole on a Florida golf course recently revealed a hidden 1920s Prohibition-era wine cellar, though sadly most of the bottles had succumbed to the humidity of the last century. A London pub offered discounts to guests who could pronounce Gewürztraminer correctly, turning pronunciation into entertainment with a surprisingly strong participation. Gewürztraminer, of course, is that floral grape Alsace is known for it, but it's grown around the world, including in Canada. A Brazilian study released this week found that nearly 48% of Gen Z drinkers now ask AI to design their cocktails based on mood rather than ingredients, leading to the rise of the sad girl spritz. A distillery in North Yorkshire, England, co-owned by the comedian Ricky Gervais, has just released its first single malt, called Three Ridings, with a marketing campaign that mocks the seriousness of traditional whiskey tasting notes. Rather than describing the whiskey with typical flowery prose about hints of scorched leather or whispers of old library books, they've chosen the anti-tasting note, no tasting notes at all. For context, Ricky Gervais' previous honest marketing for the distillery included lines like, "Enjoy life, you'll be dead soon," and "One day you'll be underground for good." All right, for your calendar this week, today, Wednesday, March 25th, is International Waffle Day and National Spanish Paella Day. It's 2-for-1 Wednesdays. For waffles, try a Waffle 75, which is a crisp toasted waffle topped with lemon curd alongside sparkling Riesling, or go Belgian-inspired with a classic Belgian tripel. For paella, pour a juicy Valencia Red or a Spanish-inspired rosé alongside the saffron and seafood pan. Thursday, March 26th, is National Spinach Day, which would turn my son green. I swear he's the president of the Anti-Vegetable League. Still can't get him to eat them. So lean into your green pairings here. A zesty Santorini Acertico has the saline punch to stand up to bitter greens, but not my son. Friday, March 27th, is International Whiskey Day. The day was created to honor Michael Jackson, the beer and whiskey writer, not the pop star, and it raises awareness for Parkinson's disease. Do a Canadian whiskey flight and compare it to Scotch and Irish expressions side by side. For something more structured, host a blind grain tasting with Ontario spirits next to traditional Scotch to see if you can detect the barrel finish. Saturday, March 28th, is National Black Forest Cake Day and National Something on a Stick Day, another double header. For the cake, open a sweet red wine like Banyuls from France that has that cherry and earth character to echo what's on the plate. For skewers, think caprese skewers with a chilled rosé cava, or build a whole skewer and spritz situation around grilled veggie and chicken skewers and low alcohol by volume spritzes. Monday, March 30th, is National Hot Chicken Day. Heat needs a counterpoint. I always say heat meets sweet. The best pairings, an off-dry Riesling, a crisp lager, or a cooling yogurt-based cocktail if you really want to get creative. Tuesday, March 31st is National Oysters on the Half-Shell Day. We're saving the best for last. Fun fact, oysters are high in zinc, which helps your body metabolize alcohol more efficiently. Classic pairings, Muscadet, Chablis, Riesling. You could also try traditional method sparkling wine. Oysters and bubbles on a Tuesday? Oh yes. And did you know that bubbles in your glass of sparkling wine aren't just for show? A scientific study has found that fizz actually acts as a flavor elevator. As the bubbles rise, they drag aromatic molecules to the surface, which is why a flute of champagne smells more intensely than a still white wine. It's also why a flute can smell completely different from a wide coupe glass, even though the wine is identical. But hey, I beg to differ. I still enjoy my sparkling wines in a white wine glass. It's not as big a bowl as red wine or certainly a coupe, but I like to swirl my wine, and yes, even bubbles, to really aerate the aromas. And finally, scientists at UC Davis University in California published a research paper showing that the cause of red wine headaches may not be sulfites after all. It may be quercetin, a flavonoid found in grape skins that converts to a compound called quercetin glucuronide during digestion. That compound blocks an enzyme responsible for breaking down alcohol metabolites, allowing acetaldehyde to build up in the body. Acetaldehyde causes flushing, headaches, and nausea. Red wines grown in sun-drenched conditions tend to have higher quercetin levels, which is why some bottles hit harder than others. Grapes essentially make their own sunscreen, and for some people that sunscreen becomes quite a headache. Meanwhile, I'm writing my scripts for our Easter show specials on CTV Your Morning and City TV's Breakfast Television coming up next week. On other shows later this season, we'll be chatting about Mother's Day, Father's Day, FIFA World Cup, Canada Day, and summer sipping, whether it's wine, beer, spirits, RTDs, or cocktails. If you'd like your brand featured on these TV segments or future ones, or would like to advertise with us through our podcast, newsletter, website, social media, or mobile apps, please email me at natalie@nataliemclean.com. I'm sharing more sips and tips on Instagram at Natalie McLean Wine, so join me there for more of the weird and wonderful. If you're reading the paperback or ebook or listening to the audiobook of my memoir, Wine Witch on Fire, Rising from the Ashes of Divorce, Defamation, and Drinking Too Much, a national bestseller and one of Amazon's best books of the year, I'd love to hear from you at natalie@nataliemclean.com. I'll put a link in the show notes to all retailers worldwide at nataliemclean.com/382. Okay, on with the show. Now, triple distillation is one of the hallmarks of Irish whiskey. Mm-hmm. What does that mean in a non-technical sense? I have a sense that the spirit is passing through the stills three times. But is there anything more to it? And more importantly, what does that give the whiskey?
It's really all about the kind of the finishing of the product. I mean, The Scots are renowned for double distillation. Scotch whiskey, as we know, is incredibly successful, and that's all based on a double distillation method. In Ireland, 3 is the magic number, so we've got 3 styles of whiskey. We talked about that earlier, the grain, the malt, and the blend. Mm-hmm. So we believe in Ireland that triple distillation through those copper pots is just that little bit better than our Scottish neighbours.
Sure.
And I guess we think that would kind of maybe lead to a smoother or a better refined finish in our liquid. We can't say that's categorically versus our Scotch counterparts, but yeah, it's that final kind of finishing or that smoothness that we're always kind of searching for, and that happens through that kind of third distillation.
Right.
So it's something that's important to us in Ireland, and something at McConnell's that we're very precious about. So absolutely triple distilled all the time.
Yeah, marrying those grains. Let's taste.
Right, yeah.
We've done lots of talking.
That's a good idea.
Let's taste. Let's start with your 5-year-old signature release. Tell us about that.
So the 5-year-old signature release, what can I say about this? Well, a number of things. First of all, we use American bourbon first fill barrels. So in America, the bourbon barrels are used once,
Okay.
but they're not used a second time. And that's to protect the cooperage industry in America. So once those barrels have been used and disgorged, they're available to other distillers around the world.
Okay.
Scots and Irish use American bourbon a lot. What's different about us is that we will only use American bourbon first fill. That means that the last liquid that was in that barrel was American bourbon. Not another Scotch or another Irish.
I see.
So if you want to nose and have a little
give
nose.
Give me a little tutorial on how to nose, how it's different maybe from nosing a wine.
Right, well, I'm not sure about different from nosing a wine, but one thing that we always talk about is that each of your nostrils will have a little different kind of nose.
That's true.
You can get something a little different. So, so we kind of recommend that you try each nostril, and you maybe will get something a little different out of each. Now, in our 5-year-old, we're getting, hopefully, I mean, this is all personal, right? What I get, what you get, it can be affected by what you've been eating during the day also. But, we would like to get, I think you get a little bit of citrus on the nose, maybe some floral notes. And then if you want to have a little taste, we should toast and say sláinte. Sláinte.
Yes.
And if you have a little taste, I'm hoping that you're going to get some vanilla undertones coming from the bourbon.
Okay. Wow, that just fills your senses. Wow. It's smooth.
Smooth is often the word that's used. Absolutely. There's a couple of things that I kind of talk about in our liquid that's maybe different to some other Irish whiskies at a different price point, let's say. So some Irish whiskies will have a very high grain content and a small malt content. We kind of balance that. So we kind of take up our malt content almost as much as our grain. And what I feel that this gives us is a warm sensation on the tip of your tongue, but not a burning sensation.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Whiskey at first for me, when years ago, I was like, oh, I can't drink it. It's just too hot.
Fiery.
People say burns.
Fiery.
But this doesn't.
For some people, that could be, if it's a higher grain component, you get that fieriness.
Right.
The second element is, at the back of your throat and the kind of long-lasting finish.
Yes.
We believe is
back.
Right. If this was a high grain content, that finish would dissipate very quickly. If it was like a 95 grain and 5 malt, it would be more of a standard whiskey than a super premium. You would not get that finish that you just got there.
Right.
So warm but not burny, and that long-lasting finish is what we get from the higher malt content, and also that kind of vanilla note from the bourbon barrels.
That's the same in wine, the long finish, that how long can you continue to smell those aromas is a sign of good quality and excellence. Now, what grains? Barley?
Barley, yes.
And
barley.
then the malt is?
It's malted barley. So there are 3 styles. There's grain, malt, and pot whiskey, and we're blending grain and malted barley.
Okay.
The third style of pot whiskey, we don't actually produce pot whiskey. It's unique to some distilleries in Ireland.
Okay.
And as a quick aside, pot still whiskey was invented by Irish distillers who were trying to avoid paying tax. You were taxed on your malted barley.
Okay.
So they started making whiskey without the malt in it. But we don't do that. It's really good stuff, but we don't actually do that because we can't do it in our distillery. But so this is a blend of grain and malt whiskey. Okay. So it's a blend of those two.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Sláinte. I guess it has to say, I've heard there's a superstition too, that the glasses have to clink or else you're inviting 7 years of bad luck.
Right. There you go. Well, we should certainly clink our glasses. So that's our 5-year-old blend. I keep talking about super premium. Price point for this in the LCBO at the moment is $54. It's not at that kind of $40 price point. It's a little bit more premium than that. But we believe for the quality of the liquid, the quality of the package, the transformation story that we're telling, it
is just so smooth. That really, I love it. Like
delighted.
I drink mostly wine.
Right.
Now I do write about wine and spirits, but this just, oh my,
Good. It doesn't leave you kind of feeling
burnt
or flushed or anything like that. It's warm.
It's like a liquid hug.
There you go.
Like a cable
What better
sweater.
for St. Patrick's Day, which is coming up very soon? What better than to try a little McConnell's Irish whiskey coming up to St. Patrick's?
exactly. All right. So sherry cask finish.
Sherry cask, okay.
All right.
So
and you chose Oloroso sherry as opposed to Amontillado or other types of sherry.
No real reason for that. Graham selects all of our barrels, so his preference at that point in time, and probably to do with availability also, was these wonderful Oloroso sherry casks. So again, I bow to his greater knowledge in this space, and but Oloroso and that sherry gives a lot in a short period of time. So like even if we talked about it earlier, look at the color there.
I know it's quite
rich, incredible,
beautiful.
And people say to me, "Well, how long do you leave it in the barrel for? Is it a full year?" And I say, "Look, it all depends." And they say, "Oh, what do you mean it depends? Surely it has to be, a certain length of time." Yes, it does, but it depends on the quality of the weather outside. Our barrels are not kept, in fact, anywhere in Ireland, they're not kept in a climate-controlled environment.
Okay, so outside to season them?
No, they're inside a rick house or a warehouse.
Okay.
But the temperature in the warehouse can fluctuate quite dramatically.
All right.
And that summer that Graham rightly delayed the bottling of our sherry cask, we'd had a particularly poor summer, even by Irish standards, which, we don't get great summers. But we had lots of cloud and rain, and it was damp and kind of chilly. If you had a really warm summer, the opposite of that, the liquid would have been ready. So when I tell people it could be 8 or 9 months, but it could be 10 or 11, it really is because the weather is important. If we have a really great summer, we could be taking that out in 8 or 9 months. It would just be the perfect blend for us and the perfect taste profile for us. But if it's been cold, we got to leave it in for that bit longer. And again, that's the kind of the art and the science, I guess, that Graham brings to the operation. But a different color, and the season really matters.
Yeah. And do you taste the sherry influence?
Well, I believe you absolutely tasted it. And first of all, on the nose.
Oh, yes. That's
don't
right.
You?
Yes.
Immediately.
And yet it's still a whiskey. I'm not confusing it with tasting sherry.
But you can get that kind of fortified wines coming through.
Absolutely.
On the nose.
The nuttiness.
Figs, nuttiness. Yeah, you're definitely getting
Beautiful.
that. Then on the palate, I talk about Christmas cake in a bottle. So when you taste this, you're going to get a lot of those kind of cinnamon, raisins. Like
it just explodes.
Bursts, right?
Yeah,
it's like
really does.
A sherry burst. This is kind of quite refined and coming out of the bourbon.
Back. This is like
a sherry burst. This is right at you. I'm here.
It is.
It's a good way of describing it.
But yet not burning either, though. But it does burst. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Wow.
You have to go slow with these.
You do have to go slow with these, and important to note, the sherry cask is actually 46% ABV.
Okay, alcohol.
Whereas the 5 year is 42% ABV. Both of those things are a little notch above the norm. Whiskey needs to be 40% ABV.
Okay.
So we could easily bottle this at 3 years and 40%.
Okay.
But it's 5 years and it's 42%.
2%. Okay.
And again, because we're moving up and we're what we call premiumizing, we're going into a cask finish, we felt that it was right to kind of bottle that at 46%. Sometimes a little drop of water in the 46% can kind of just change the taste profile as well.
Does it open up the aromas?
It opens up the aromas and that. So we could try it like that. But a sherry burst is really what you're getting out of this guy here.
And what does the extra alcohol do? Does it just carry forward those flavors more?
Yeah, it carries forward the flavors for sure. We also believe that it gives mixologists an opportunity to do different things with their cocktails. And today we just had a lovely seminar with a number of mixologists, and we were talking just about that.
Really?
This is perfect, like in a long drink, like a McConnell's and ginger ale. And I must talk about ginger ale actually. I'll come back to that. But this is perfect in a long drink like a McConnell's and ginger ale. But for a more complex kind of cocktail, the sherry cask finish at that kind of stronger taste profile, higher ABV, really has those flavors kind of leaning into that cocktail.
Come through in the cocktail too, without overwhelming it.
Without overwhelming it, yeah.
Oh, do go back to ginger ale. There's a story there.
There is a story there, and it's particularly appropriate, I think, in Canada, because when I speak to Canadians and I raise the topic of ginger ale, because of the famous Canada Dry ginger ale.
Yes.
People assume that Canada invented ginger ale.
But no.
But no. And if I tell them that it's actually little old Belfast back in the homeland that was responsible for the person that invented ginger ale, they're a bit surprised at that. But it was a Dr. Cantrell who went on to build a business called Cantrell and Cochrane, which is C&C, which is certainly very well known in Ireland and GB and across Europe. But C&C, and it was this guy Cantrell that in the 1800s invented carbonated water. And then added ginger to carbonated water. So we firmly believe that because ginger ale was invented in Belfast and McConnell's is bringing distilling back to Belfast and was once the great whiskey of Belfast, that we have a unique global to McConnell's and ginger ale.
Indeed.
At least we believe we have anyway.
Any collaborations in mind or anything you can reveal?
We certainly have plans. Nothing that we can reveal, but
that's a natural fit.
Yeah, it's a natural fit. And we believe we'll tell that story to the full in the coming months and years.
Excellent. Okay, well, sherry cask is amazing.
Great.
My goodness. Next up, we have the cognac cask.
Next up and last up is the cognac cask. And again, the color tells a story here because you can see that the color is a little more color than the 5-year, but it doesn't have as much as the sherry.
That's true.
And this is the kind of fortified wine and the Oloroso sherry casks, giving a different color than the kind of more refined kind of cognac.
Cognac, of course, is the French white wine that's distilled into a spirit in northern France.
Exactly.
So you're using their casks.
Yeah, and when you nose this and taste this, sugar is something that comes to mind, and castor sugar. Dried pineapple, people talk about. So and that kind of long, lingering ginger spice is what you should get from this. But it's a different taste. This is kind of quite robust. This is more refined.
It's already
in my
more
palate.
of a subtle nose than
Isn't it?
The second one.
Right. So the sherry's got that kind of sherry
push.
Boost, if you want, but this is more refined, kind of cognac French, It's kind of Sláinte.
Oh, Sláinte, yes.
Can't forget that.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. That's 5-year-old.
It's the 5-year-old, yeah.
Got
it's the 5-year-old, but it's been finished in it's probably closer to 6-year-old, but because we keep ourselves open, whether it's 8 months, 10 months, or a year, we still call it 5-year-old. So it's 5 years, and then in cognac barrels for 9, 10 months.
It's so smooth.
That's very different, huh?
It's beautiful.
Very, very good. But you can't have any favorites, It's like I have 4 children at home, and they're all equal in my eyes, and it's the
different?
same. What we talk about is kind of different occasions, This is your everyday, beautiful whiskey neat, whiskey with ginger, beautiful product. This for me is kind of after dinner, dark chocolate, winter's evening. Nice roaring fire. And then this is refinement. This is the champagne of Irish whiskies, in my humble eyes.
Yes.
This is light, it's fragrant, it's got that sugary kind of flavor to it, and very refined drinking in the cognac finish.
Absolutely, beautiful. And do you ever pair them with food, like with a meal? Or are they best, do you think, enjoyed after a meal?
We do. We have, back at the distillery, we have our own resident chef.
Okay.
And Gemma produces kind of different meals or different courses of the meal with each of the expressions. So this guy tends to be coming later on and with the kind of dessert,
Yes.
And then chocolate is quite interesting, So if you wanted to have kind of chocolate, we would always recommend a lighter chocolate with these two, but a nice rich dark chocolate with the sherry cask is fantastic with this guy here.
I think it would chocolate melts at body temperature, but I would think that the higher alcohol would just emulsify it even more, and just coat every crevice of your mouth.
Great.
Oh my gosh, how
really
decadent!
Is great. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I do get the orange peel in there as well. Very Christmassy. It's again brings back those spices.
Great.
All right, so we talked about the LCBO. Let me make sure I'm covering everything.
Yeah.
St. Patrick's Day is Canada's single biggest, whiskey moment.
Yeah.
What is the one thing you wish Canadian bar staff knew about McConnell's?
Wow. I mean, there's so many things that they could talk about McConnell's.
Sure.
I think if they're talking about the quality of the liquid, which is important, right? Because people go into bars and very often it'll be the bartender's recommendation that will influence their choice of
drink. Like the house wine.
Right, exactly. Or even your choice of meal. Often I would kind of go, I'm caught between the steak and the fish. What would you recommend? So, our bartender community and those mixologists are, really important to our brand. So, I would love those guys to talk about the fact that, this is a 5-year-old premium Irish whiskey, and that number 5 is very important to us. So if that one thing is the one thing to remember, that's great. If they want to remember about the malt content, then happy for them to talk about that as well, and really replay that story that we talked about, that it's warm and smooth with a nice long finish.
Right.
And again, that leans back into the 5 years old. So 5-year-old and that high malt content for a blended whiskey would be the two things I would ask for them to talk about when they're speaking about McConnell's.
And then as they pour their second and third drink, they can get into the snug and the prison and everything else.
And we a lot of the stories are on the labels and on the bottles. So I talked to the staff at the LCBO and our mixologists, and they've got so many things going on that they can't remember everything. But all of the cues for the little stories about Belfast are all on the bottle. So if they just want to take time to read the label and familiarize themselves with this, then it's all there.
It's all there. So globally, Irish whiskey exports grew 13% in 2024. That's strong category momentum.
Absolutely.
Canada has a very established relationship with Scotch and, of course, Canadian rye whiskey. Where do you see McConnell's fitting in the Canadian whiskey landscape?
I think it's coming, we're growing our brand in Canada at a very interesting time. Obviously, there's no bourbon on the shelf here at the moment in the LCBO.
People are looking for substitutes?
People are looking for substitutes. And whilst, I sold Scotch whiskey in my previous career, sometimes the bridge from bourbon to Scotch,
it's a big bridge.
Can be, it's a big bridge, particularly if the Scotch is like a smoky, peaty, high grain content.
True. That's what
Scotch,
I was exposed to first.
Right. so if you're in, I'll not mention any brand names, but if you're in that space, and you go from a bourbon to here,
that's quite a palate shock.
That's a palate shock for sure. I firmly believe that Irish whiskey is kind of a nice bridge
middle
there.
Spot,
And McConnell's, because of what we've spoken about earlier, those first fill American bourbon barrels, the tastings that I've been doing this week, a lot of people are saying, I'm getting bourbon from that. Would I be getting bourbon? The answer is yes, you would be. So I think we're coming into Canada and the LCBO at a really interesting time. There's an opportunity for Irish whiskey to really expand the category, to grow the category, and there's colleagues of ours in the industry who are here this week, pre-St. Patrick's Day, talking about the industry, because we compete on the shelf, but we collaborate a lot as an industry. So like our master distiller would seek advice and give advice to other blenders and distillers around the industry, and we share notes and all of that sort of thing. So I think Irish whiskey is on the rise. I think there's an opportunity in Canada now that maybe wouldn't have presented itself 18 months, 2 years ago.
That's true.
And I think we're in a great position to really grow that category. And, we believe in that old saying that the rising tide will lift all ships.
Yes.
We believe we're in a really good space as a category. And I believe that we're in a great space for McConnell's to really grow the brand here in Canada.
That's exciting. All right. So if we were sitting here, we are sitting here a few days before St. Patrick's Day, there's an Irish word that I love. Crack, I think it is, meaning lively, fun atmosphere. We're here at the House of Parliament pub in Toronto. And it's one of the 4 pillars of experience at your distillery. What is the single best piece of crack, or the funniest, strangest, or most unexpectedly human moment that has ever happened while bringing this whiskey to life?
Oh my goodness. I mean, so many things have happened, in the distillery. I remember when we were in the middle of construction, and I was taking the architect and I were going through, and we were looking at the space that was going to be our cocktail teaching class. It's a beautiful space for 16 people. A master mixologist teaches them how to make cocktails. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of the building. And it was a sunny day like this, and I was looking out the window, and I could see a little kind of graffiti scored onto the window. And keep in mind that we've kept those same windows because we had to preserve the building.
Okay.
And I kind of peered a bit closer, and I'll not say the name, but it was a name, and Republican POW. And this is someone who had been,
imprisoned during the Troubles?
During the Troubles. And he had one fine day scored his name on this. And I kind of, it took me back a little bit, because, that is part of our history,
sure,
and we need to know that that's been part of our history. We're moving on from that, but we have to recognize that that is something that happened in our history and acknowledge that that happened and really realize that there's a brighter future. So that I remember that. And then in a similar context, on the opening day, we had politicians from all of the Northern Ireland parties there. And one of our politicians had actually, in a previous life, spent a little bit of time in the prison. In the prison. And that's not unusual because from either side of the political divide, famously Gerry Adams from the Republican side, Ian Paisley from the Unionist side, both have been in Crumlin Road jail. Eamon de Valera from the 1916 uprising, he was imprisoned in Crumlin Road jail. So that's not unusual. Belfast is a small city, and lots of people for different reasons were there. But anyway, this politician who was there as a minister on the day was being interviewed, and I was standing in the wings hosting proceedings, but not in the actual interview. And the politician was said, "Well, how are you enjoying your second visit to the Crumlin Road jail?" And I almost nearly passed out. I thought the whole day is going to go off piste. And I thought, how's he going to answer this? He answered it brilliantly. And I really think it's a story about McConnell's and the jail that I love to talk about. He said, yes, I was here once. And back then this was it was not a nice place. It was damp. It was dark. You were nervous. It was violent. It was a terrible place to be in a prison, right? Sure. In a prison in the 1980s, of course it was. But look what we have done. Look what these guys have done to this building. They have transformed the building into this wonderful space that we have today, which is about bringing distilling back to Belfast, which is about bringing distilling and whiskey to all types of people and places and faces and spaces. So he answered it wonderfully, that this was a place of innovation in the future. Right. And I thought, wow, that was quite an exceptional.
That's great.
So from a moment where I thought everything was going to go, it was fantastic.
That's great.
So lots of things like that. But we're just really proud to be playing our part in bringing McConnell's back and bringing distilling back to Belfast.
Wow, that's a great way to wrap. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to mention?
Honestly, I think you've covered everything.
Okay,
really.
good.
I can't think of anything. It's been great talking to you today.
John,
I've really enjoyed it.
I love the stories. I love storytelling.
Thank you.
That's what makes it memorable.
Right.
And even all the little pieces, and of course, tasting them, it really, it lit up my senses. And it really changed my perception of whiskey. So obviously I have a lot to learn because these are beautiful.
Well, that's part of my job. Yes, of course, I'm an ambassador. I'm very proud to be an ambassador for McConnell's, but I also play my role in Irish whiskey. And we want Irish whiskey to get back there where it belongs. And Belfast to be at the epicenter of Irish whiskey again. So thank you for today.
Thank you,
and,
yes.
Sláinte.
Sláinte, and may I say, let's see if I can remember this. May your troubles be less and your happiness more. And may nothing but good times walk through your door.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Sláinte. Cheers.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed our chat with John. Here are my takeaways. Number 1, why do Irish distillers believe triple distillation creates a smoother, more refined whiskey? As John explains, it's really about finishing the product. The Scots are renowned for double distillation. In Ireland, 3 is the magic number. So, they have 3 styles of whiskey, the grain, the malt, and the blend, and they also believe that triple distillation through those copper pots creates a smoother drink. He notes they can't say categorically that's right, but that final kind of smoothness that they're searching for really happens on that third distillation he finds. Number 2, what makes whiskey feel warm and smooth on the palate versus fiery and harsh? So some Irish whiskeys tend to have a very high grain content and a smaller malt content. John explains at McConnell's they balance that. They take up or increase their malt content to almost as much as their grain content, which gives you that warm sensation on the tip of your tongue, but not the burning one. If there's higher grain content, whether that's barley or rye or whatever you're using, you get more fieriness, which you often will find if you compare like Irish whiskey side by side with Canadian and Scotch. Now, they're going to argue as well that they're smooth and whatever, but this was his explanation. And just a clarification note, malt in whiskey refers to malted barley that's been soaked in water and allowed to germinate or sprout, and then dried in a kiln. So this process converts the starches into the fermentable sugars necessary for alcohol production. And it's the defining ingredient in malt whiskey, creating those distinct complex flavors. The second element that contributes to smoothness is about the finish. And it's that element at the back of your throat. How long are you still smelling that whiskey after you swallow it? If there's a high grain content, the finish, he says, will dissipate quickly. But that long-lasting finish is what you get from a higher malt content, that kind of vanillum note that comes from bourbon barrels. And finally, why does the Belfast origin of ginger ale make it such a natural pairing with McConnell's Irish whiskey? John says when he speaks to Canadians and raises the topic of ginger ale, because of the famous brand Canada Dry ginger ale, most people assume that Canada invented it, but no, or nay. He tells them that it's actually Belfast, back in the homeland, that was responsible for inventing it. And they're always a bit surprised. It was actually a Dr. Cantrell who went on to build a business called Cantrell and Cochrane, which is C&C, a very well-known brand in Ireland, Great Britain, and across Europe. In the 1800s, he invented carbonated water and then added ginger to it. McConnell's and ginger ale, it's a natural fit, and I see a product extension coming in the future. If you missed episode 331, go back and take a listen. I chat about how oak and yeast magically transform both wine and whiskey. I'll share a short clip with you now to whet your appetite.
When you're drinking whiskey and it's that beautiful brown color, that's all from the wood. It is completely clear when it goes into a barrel and it's brown when it comes out. So color is part of what changes. And also all those flavors. Different spirits have different rules about how they age. So wine goes into new oak, bourbon goes into new oak, single malt whiskey goes into old oak. It has to have been used for something else, second fill. So they'll use a bourbon cask or a port cask or a sherry cask. That'll get the flavor of whatever else has been in it because the process of aging, as the temperature goes up and down, the pores in the wood open and close. So they'll open, the liquid gets drawn into that inside layer of the wood and then gets pushed back out. So there's this kind of back and forth process, which is why so many of the experimental attempts to accelerate that process use heat to try to cycle it faster. And it's part of why people, by tradition more than anything else, will have younger American whiskeys than European whiskeys.
You won't want to miss next week when we chat with Alan Ramey, author of the new book, Pressing Matters, the debates, controversies, and mysteries that have shaped the world of wine. Alan also competed on the blind tasting team for the University of Cambridge and is now the owner and winemaker at Ramey Cellars in Sonoma County. To give you a taste of future guests, we'll have Michael Finnerty on pairing wine and cheese, Dr. Charles Knowles, who's just published a best-selling memoir on why we drink too much, Maricel de la Fuente on the wines of Argentina, and Nicole and Ramon Bassett on tasting victory, the life and wines of the world's favorite sommelier, Gerard Bassett. Do you have a question for any of these guests? Please let me know. Do you know someone who'd be interested in learning more about Irish whiskey and how to taste it? Please let them know about the podcast. Email them or text them now while you're thinking about it. It's so easy to find the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. Just tell them to search for that title or my name, Natalie McLean Wine, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, their favorite podcast app, or they can listen to the show on my website at nataliemclean.com/podcast. Email me if you have a sip tip question or would like to win one of 6 drinks books I have to give away. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode, or if you've read my book or are listening to it, email me at natalie@nataliemclean.com. In the show notes, you'll find a link to take a free online food and wine pairing class with me called The 5 Wine and Food Pairing Mistakes That Can Ruin Your Dinner and How to Fix Them Forever at nataliemclean.com/class. And that is all in the show notes at nataliemclean.com/382. Thank you for taking the time to join me here. I hope something great is in your glass this week. Perhaps a glass of McConnell's whiskey with ginger ale. You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So, subscribe for free now at nataliemclean.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.